start with the beginning or before the beginning, maybe.
Yes.
But so my name's Betty, and I am a near-death-like experiencer. I say near-death-like because nobody actually pronounced me dead, but I died for sure, or at least a version of me did. But I had an intense spiritual transformation in March of 2019. I went from a homeless, drug addicted prostitute to
Wow.
not any of those things. And that my near death experience was onset by a drug overdose. And I had been a drug addict for over 20 years. My parents were both addicts. I come from a whole family of addiction and poverty. And yeah, my parents both committed suicide in 2007 from their addiction and their impoverishment. Actually, the anniversary of their death was just yesterday. It was, well, yesterday for me, 2 days ago for you.
Yes.
But I'm sorry, October 4th, 2007 is their death day. And it's been 17 years, which is wild to think about that it's been that long. But after their death, I spent my whole life just trying to escape the feeling of their death because it was so dense and it was so heavy and it was so racked in trauma. And so my addiction kind of stepped in and became my God. My addiction became my higher power, my whole universe. It became my parent. It became my everything.
Mm.
And it made me cause a lot of damage in my life, a lot of harm. I abandoned my sister. She was only 18 when my parents died. I was 23. And my addiction made me into this maniacal, ruthless abuser. And today I have some spiritual language for it, but my addiction, it just completely made my whole world my shadow. I became a shadow version of myself. There was no light. There was nothing other than the darkness. And so I really thrived in the darkness, and I took that on as my whole personality until I had this spiritual experience from this overdose, and my whole life completely transformed. And pieces of my experience were I experienced a life review, but I didn't just experience a life review for my life. I experienced a life review for the whole world, the whole collective. I experienced things in my life review that did not happen in my life. Not in this lifetime. It didn't
Mm.
happen. In previous
Yes.
lifetimes it had. But I had experiences like I experienced childbirth in my life review, but I am not a person who has had a child. I experienced the death of a child in my life review, and I was experiencing all of these emotions, like the extreme high of unconditional love versus the absolute guttural despair of death, of creation, and then everything in between, all the things that had happened in this lifetime for me, like my parents' suicide and all of the rage and abuse that I had inflicted on other people in my life. I was experiencing that from
Mm.
their point of view as well as my own. And I felt like I was in hell. And all I thought was, oh, I'm dead. I'm dead, right? I'm experiencing my parents' suicide. I must be dead as well. Why am I seeing them? And this is what death is. This is hell. And then I started to hear some masculine voices. My father's voice was one of them, and he just kept saying, you are worthy of all the love in the universe. You are worthy of all the love in the universe. And so I started following his voice. I didn't believe that, but I started following his voice because I knew his voice. And that's when I landed in the light. And that's when everything got downloaded into my awareness all at once. Everything spiritual. It was like the life review was everything human that was getting downloaded into me, and then traveling into the light, it was all the spiritual knowledge in the world was being downloaded into me. And I was shown that I'm not a body. I'm actually a spirit, and I have this human costume on, and I'm playing a part here. And that I had designed the part that I'm playing, and that I had picked every life experience that I've ever had. And the way that I saw it was that I was going through this gigantic grocery store with an empty grocery cart, and lining the walls of the grocery store aisles were these big giant cereal boxes. And every cereal box had a life experience printed on it. And I just started grabbing everything. I was like, all of it, please. I love cereal. Give me more, more, more. And I was I was grabbing very dense experiences like poverty. Poverty is one of the most painful human experiences that a person can have.
Absolutely.
Hunger, addiction, prostitution, degradation. I picked the partners that I would marry in my life. I picked my parents. I picked the family line that I would be born into. So, in my experience of being downloaded with the knowing that it's not a belief for me, it's a knowing that it could be a belief, but this idea around pre-birth planning, my victim mentality completely cracked off of me. I'm no longer a victim to my circumstance. I'm a divine co-creator of this reality. I am designing my life with the light, with the divine.
Mm-hmm.
And, my human can't understand how a life experience like childhood sexual trauma could evolve me as a spirit. But today, I have this deep-seated faith. I don't need to know why. I don't need to know why people choose certain experiences. I don't need to know why I chose certain experiences. I just know that it's all working out in divine right order, and it's all happening for a divine reason. And that gives me so much freedom in my life that I don't have to try to fix, manage, and control or find the logical answer for something. I just believe. I just have really deep faith today. And while I was in the space of eternity, I loved it. It felt like the high that I was chasing my whole life with drugs. I finally felt that feeling of wholeness. And that's what I was using drugs for. I think I was using drugs really to numb myself, but just to feel anything that wasn't the feelings that I was experiencing in my life. But the feeling of heaven is like a great sense of reunion. It's like seeing an old friend that you haven't seen for decades, but just that instant connection. Like, it doesn't matter that we haven't spoken in 20 years. We know each other and we love each other. And that's what it felt like. And I begged to stay there. In fact, I transformed into a small child. I was like, there's no way that I'm leaving. I'm not. No, 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 no. And they said, you have to go back to Earth, not as a punishment, but because you haven't completed your life. There's still other cereal boxes that need to be cracked open, like the quote unquote good ones, like the next part of my life needed to be experienced. And they told me that I was going to have soulmates and kindred spirits and mentors and teachers. I was going to be living in spiritual awareness, and that I would have spiritual community in my life. And so I was going to go on to my recovery journey, and my life wasn't going to be nearly as challenging as it had been. And they told me to trust them, and they sent me on my way. And I was like, I do not trust you guys. You are giving me zero reason to trust you. No, no, no. And then I found myself back in my body. And I just wrote the whole thing off as drug-induced psychosis. Like, I was a radical atheist. Like, I just thought, oh my God, I got so high that I thought I was talking to God. That was crazy. I'll never be that messed up ever again. And then the universe stepped in and showed me that I was wrong, and that it was a real experience, and that I really had to get onto a different path. And I'll pause there.
When you were on the other side, you also described that you were in this sort of a spaceship and in a different dimension, and there was a commander, and you saw yourself with a whole group of other souls that were ready to come here and incarnate and have their mission.
Yeah. So the first part of my
the
first part of my experience was a download around the Great Awakening. And the scenery that came, or the imagery that came into my mind, was that I was on the deck of a spaceship, and I had come out of the side of one of the walls of the spaceship. I don't know what the symbolism is for that, but I always say it just in case somebody hears it and they say, oh my God, me too. Because I have found one other person who said, oh my God, me too. I was on the same deck with you. And it was like thousands of other souls were all around us. And I don't know if the coming out of the side means like parallel, because that reality isn't necessarily up or down or anything like that. It's just shifting into a different awareness. It's like right next to us. It's like right here. We just can't see it. Yeah. Right. We just can't see it. Right. So Yeah, there was a commander in the center, and it felt like maybe it was Christ or Krishna or Buddha or Source or just any language that resonates with people.
Okay.
But, like for me, because I grew up in the Western world, and, we grow up with Christianity as our main mythology now. So
We
for
do.
me, it felt like that was the archetype, like it was like a Christ-like light that was the commander, and the commander was just gearing us all up for our quote unquote jump to earth, and saying that
Yeah.
myself and these thousands of other souls were volunteers that were coming to earth to liberate consciousness. I don't know if consciousness actually wants to be liberated, but that was the download that's what we're here to do.
Mm.
And everybody was so jazzed. I mean, like everybody was really lit up, like so excited to be doing this. And
Yes.
many of those volunteers had never been to Earth before. I have been to Earth many, many times before. I've been
Wow.
here since the whole of creation. I just keep coming back and back and back over and over and over again. And I don't know why. Every time I come back, I'm like, what am I doing? Why do I keep doing this? But
Yeah.
I think heaven's probably really boring, because
Yeah.
why
Yeah.
would we come back here over and over and over again?
I don't
So
know.
there's just
Yeah.
something to do. Just
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
to do. Let me pass some time in infinity. Let me just
Yeah.
pass a couple of years.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was a big part of my download, was that I am a spiritual soldier sent here on a divine mission. The first part of my life was boot camp, and the second part of my life is carrying out the mission. And it's not nearly as challenging. It really isn't,
Mm,
because I
mm,
do have very intense connections with other spirits that are also on the same mission.
mhm. So, when you say that you've been here so many times, did you see those past lives and what some of them were like?
Definitely, absolutely. And that
Yeah.
that was a big part of that life review, where I was experiencing everything that's ever happened on Earth, because I've been here so many times. I have experienced everything that's ever happened on Earth.
Yes.
But yeah, and I've done a lot of regression therapy as part of my spiritual integration, even just sometimes the self regression therapies on YouTube. Sometimes I'll just sit and listen and do like a self regression, just to see if something wants to come up. I mean, I have a lot of present life trauma to deal with, so I don't necessarily have to go back into past lives to
Yeah.
deal with stuff. I got a lot of stuff to deal with just right now. But
Yes.
sometimes it's very helpful. It's a helpful tool for me to just
Absolutely.
recognize this hugeness, this vastness. Why am I so obsessed with this one little thing in this one little moment? When I
Yeah.
think about all of infinity and all of the lifetimes that I've had here, sometimes it helps me to zoom out and realize, like, girl, you don't have to be tripping over this like little tiny thing, because it literally doesn't matter.
Yes.
Literally. So a couple of the past lives that I'll mention is that I did a regression, and I found myself in ancient Egypt, which I've
Mm,
always felt very drawn to that culture. And I was a handmaiden to a
mm,
princess,
mhm.
and the princess died very young. And so my life was left with no purpose. I had no job anymore. And at the end of the life, I saw myself just kind of as this shriveled old lady who was very unfulfilled. And that's how I died.
Mhm.
And then it shifted to another past life where I was a soldier, and I was like in this huge suit of armor on this battlefield, and it was just bodies everywhere, and like I was all bloody, but I had served my purpose. I like fought in this war, I had killed all these people, and then my purpose was over. That was it. I did what I was supposed to do. And again, fast forward to the end of that life, and just like this old man with no purpose for like the whole second part of his life.
Wow.
And then it correlated to me for this life,
Mm,
that the first part of this lifetime for myself was filled with zero purpose, and the end is filled with all the purpose. And in those
yes.
previous lives, it had been the opposite, where the beginning of my life I was bred to be purpose filled, and then my purpose disintegrated halfway through my life. So it was the balancing of the energies for that. So those are two past lives that I like talking
Yeah.
about.
And it's so amazing. So, in this lifetime, you've got all this purpose in the second part of your life, and you've got this huge mission, and you're helping so many people. which has
I hope
been,
so. Thank you.
oh, you are. I've read some of your reviews, and I myself, as I said, have been so positively influenced by the work that you do and the words that you speak and how insightful you are, and the lessons that you have learned, that you share, and you're so vulnerable. It's incredible because we then realize as well, and we're able to learn from our lessons. And you're so brave. You're incredibly courageous in this lifetime. So you must be a very evolved soul, although you put your soul through absolute hell in the first part of your life to grow is how I see it.
Yeah,
And the growth
I
is
feel like my
incredible.
soul is like a script writer who knows no bounds. She's like,
Yes.
let's just throw
Let's
everything into
just
this
do
weird
this.
movie.
Yeah.
Let's just do it all. But thank you for saying that. Courage is definitely a spiritual principle that I have been cultivating. And a
Yes.
big part of my experience was also that I saw that this world is not real. I'm like, I know that it seems very real because,
Mm.
like, like we're seeing two separate bodies and we're having this interaction with each other and we both have lived different lives. But this is a dream that we're
Mm.
having, a big collective dream. And why wouldn't I be as brave and courageous as I could be? It's a dream. Who cares?
Yes.
It's just
Yes.
a dream. I'm gonna wake back up and at home one day.
That's
Like
right.
one day when my awareness shifts out of the dream. And another part of the experience was that it literally felt like I woke up from a dream at some
Mm.
point in the experience in heaven, and I couldn't remember anything from my 35 years of life at that point in time. I couldn't remember one thing. The only thing that I could remember was that my parents had completed suicide. And I just remember waking up in eternity and like kind of shaking my head like you do when you wake up from a weird dream in bed, and you go, damn, that was so weird. Wait, what happened? Did my parents kill themselves? And then like you can't even remember any of the dream. So that's been a big part of the courage too, and the vulnerability is I'm going to stand in my most authentic self
Yes.
because this is my opportunity to live this life, and I'm going to live it the way that my soul intended me to, and that's by being as courageous and authentic as I can be.
Yes. And that is exactly what I picked up from you is courage and authenticity. Incredible. And I think you motivate other people to do that as well. So I feel like that's, part of your purpose. Maybe, there could be so many purposes that you have between now and the next 20, 30, 40 years. But that's definitely one of them is what I sensed from you. Um, those cereal boxes, so interesting. Um, do do you have many that you haven't fulfilled yet in terms of they showed you what you've picked for your cereal boxes in the future or in the present right now? Um, what are some of them? Are you able to talk about what some of them are that you selected for yourself or for your soul
Yeah,
to share?
absolutely. Yes, manifest them with me. Yes.
Yes, yes.
So well, one of the big ones when I had the experience, I saw the box of recovery and spiritual awakening, and I was like, that's never gonna happen. Not to this girl, not this chick, me. And so those were beyond my scope of understanding. How could I achieve recovery when I have been completely conditioned my whole life to believe that drugs are the solution to everything?
Yeah.
So once I started on that path, I was like, oh, the rest of the cereal boxes are going to come true as well. And some of them were creating spiritual community. I saw spiritual community box, being an author, being a speaker, and just being fearless was another part of that. Like all of it felt like you had to be very fearless to accomplish any of those
Of
things and
course.
to be a teacher. And so I am slowly but surely like slowly opening the box, like checking it out, like, okay, what's in there? Okay, let's start pouring some out.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm writing a book, and I have this opportunity to coach people through transformation and recovery coaching or spiritual coaching and act as a teacher in that way. And I have opportunities to speak, like how we're connecting right now. And
Yes.
yeah, I'm super excited to be on the other side of the experience because I had no idea that we turn into beautiful butterflies. I thought that we just stay kind of these earth dwelling grub caterpillars. And it's so
Yes.
beautiful to be out of the mud and to be up in the air.
Amazing. So when you saw yourself on the spaceship, I know a lot of people talk about star seeds and the fact that there are other galaxies that other souls have come from, and souls have come to Earth from these other amazing interdimensional galaxies and incarnated here to bring a different level of consciousness, a higher level of consciousness from what people term as 3D to 5D. Did you see that you were part of that collective soul consciousness, that you, like you said, you've had so many lives on Earth, but have you also been to other planets, galaxies?
Everything is happening simultaneously, all at the exact same moment. So
Right.
it's hard, but to explain it in a linear way,
Yeah.
yes,
Yes.
absolutely. I have been a million other places. So, and the Starseed and the Lightworker information and Dolores Cannon's information
Yes.
about the waves of volunteers, all of that clocked. So when I
Yes.
had the experience, I didn't have any of this information. I had never heard of spiritual awakening. I had never heard of a star seed or a chakra or anything like that. And then once I was able to start integrating the experience, it was like YouTube was just sending me videos of things that I had never looked at before. And I started finding all this stuff about star seeds. And I was like, that's definitely it. And yeah, so my starseed origin is from the constellation of Orion. And I
Mhm.
also have some roots in Lyra as well. And so I kind of think of it as like in this lifetime, I was born in Brooklyn, but I was raised in Las Vegas, and now I live in Brooklyn again.
Yeah.
And so I kind of think of it that way. Like maybe I was born out of the Lyra constellation, and then I moved to Orion. And like I think that we're from all of these places all at once, and
Yes.
maybe the different attributes of the different constellations resonate more in different parts of your life, because
Mhm.
again, it's all happening at the exact same moment, and it's
Yes.
an infinite number of possibilities that are happening. So
Mhm.
this is a story. The
Yes.
star seed, the light worker, the
Yes.
volunteer, it's a story because this is a dream and this is a movie that we're playing out. And I love that story. That's the one that makes me feel the most purpose filled. And so I stick with that story
Mhm.
because, again, it's the one that lights me up. It's the one that enables joy in my life. And that's what I'm here to do. I'm here to be joyful, to be light. And so I love that information so much, and it resonates very deeply with me.
And it aligns so much with this incredible man. His name is Mateus De Stefano. I think I'm saying, have you heard of him? He's incredible. And he speaks about very similar themes to what you speak about as well. And he believes too that he's come from this. Well, he's seen all of his lives. It's not even a belief, it's a knowing. He's seen it all. I won't go on too much. But yes, people probably find it so mind blowing and so crazy, that we're having this conversation. Um, However, more and more people are coming to terms with the fact that, yes, we've been in these other galaxies that are light years away. We've incarnated there. We've made some kind of a pact to come on Earth many times. I don't think that you can come just once. I think it's a reincarnating of hundreds of lives in order to get consciousness liberated, is the term. Yeah. What does liberated consciousness look like? Can you
So the
define
download
that?
around the Great Awakening for me was very loud and clear. It's like tattooed in the center of my brain.
Yeah.
And it is that we're here to shift from a level of third dimensional thinking to fifth dimensional thinking.
Yeah.
And people do that in different ways. People carry out their missions in different ways. So basically, what is 3D? What is 5D? Well, 3D is an ego centered thought system, a self centered thought system.
Mhm.
And 5D is a spirit or service centered thought system. So 5D thought is something that's aligned with spiritual virtues like honesty, open mindedness, willingness, unconditional love, patience, tolerance, while a self centered thought system is something obviously that's just about you, or maybe materialism, or something to do with social conditioning and construction that's been implemented for all of time. So
Mhm.
for me, that shift is breaking down those old social constructs that no longer serve a person or the collective, and welcoming in new ones. So I know that the shift is happening in my life, right? Because I'm completely service centered now. My whole life is a life led by service and by spiritual virtues. And I'm not saying every second of my day is like super spiritual and aligned. Like I can be a bitch when I want to be. Ask my boyfriend. He's like,
Same. Yeah.
yeah. But
Yeah.
it's a decision. It's a decision that I get to make on a minutely, hourly, daily basis. How do I want to behave in this moment? Sometimes I want to behave really human. And sometimes I want to behave like the spiritual goddess that I know that I am at my core. But it doesn't always work that way because we're here doing the human thing. We're doing the dual thing here. So
That's right.
um another thing is that these waves of volunteers that have come to liberate consciousness, they all have different roles as well. So in Dolores Cannon's literature, it talks about there's 3 waves of volunteers. The first wave are people that would be probably in their 70s now. They're people that were alive for the late 60s and early 70s when this psychedelic revolution was happening, or when the Vietnam War was happening, and they saw how unjust things were and how these things didn't make sense. They weren't working anymore. And so people started to change their thought systems, and the drugs definitely helped too.
Yes, that's right.
But so they were laying the ground for the second wave of volunteers, which are people who are, in their probably like in their third, like 35 to 55 now. And the second wave of volunteers, their purpose is to just be themselves, whatever that means to them. So they're not actually meant to do anything. Nothing needs to be done. I need do nothing. That's like my mantra. I need do nothing. I know that everything's working in divine right order. I'm a second wave volunteer.
Yes, I
And then
think
the
I am
third wave
too.
of volunteers are like our indigo children, like people maybe who have been born into spiritual awakening. Like they've always been spiritually awoken, or they resonate very deeply. They're going to be like teenagers. They're going to be much younger people, or even just, babies being born now. Those are the third waves of volunteers. A lot of people who are dealing with neurodivergence, those are also our third wave volunteers as well. They're bringing in very high frequencies that don't necessarily compute with the human avatar, which is why they experience this neurodivergentness. And so yeah, those are the we're the way makers. We're doing our thing. We're opening up grids and portals to different wavelengths of understanding.
And somebody might say, well, what for? What is the point of opening up these grids and wavelengths and portals? And,
Yeah, why
what is the
not?
purpose? Yes, why not?
Why not? I mean, like, what else is there to do? To
Yeah.
keep going the way that we have been? Because we know that doesn't work.
Yes.
Like the way that the world is set up is that we're very separated from each other. And I think that the idea between opening up the grids and welcoming in this new paradigm is that to come back to the idea of the oneness of humanity, the oneness of religion, the oneness of science and spirituality, the oneness of all things. And it's not a one size fits all. Like people can come to that understanding in lots of different ways. Just nature, coming back to a place of that original code and breaking out of the matrix that we live in, breaking out of this this merry-go-round that we've been on for so long, and hopping off and going on to another ride.
Yes, yes. Almost creating heaven on earth, as so
definitely.
many people have spoken about. Maybe that was like a bit of an experiment. Can we do it? Can we get into the most dense environment where we have complete and utter amnesia and still get to a point where we become spiritual and care for one another rather than, being very primitive? Could that have been one of the experiments that was taken?
Yeah, I love that. I absolutely think that. Absolutely. Yeah, like they say that this is the hardest school, the hardest spiritual school in all of the galaxy. I don't know if I believe that. Sometimes I think that it's actually the school for bad kids and like pregnant teens. I'm not sure which one it is, but either way, we know that it's very dense here because we have this time-space continuum. And in other galaxies, it's not like that. In other galaxies, you could have a thought and it'll manifest immediately.
Mhm.
Here, we have to deal with time, and we
Mhm.
deal with these ideas of aging, and we deal with the idea of health and wellness challenges and all these other things that we're up against. And of course, we have the environment that we're in now as well, which is obviously much, much
Mm.
different than when the Earth experiment started.
Mhm.
Like our food is very different now, and our water is different, and
Mhm.
everything in the ecosystem is completely different now. So I think that there was this core idea in the beginning to create a space where, the amnesia, how fun
Yes.
will it be to remember? How will we find each other? How will we find our way back to God? How will we find our way back to source? And then
Yes.
somewhere along the way, we just got really, really confused, and we
Yeah.
forgot that we were playing the game. But the thing is that many of us remember at some point in our lives, and that's the
That's
really
right.
fun part.
But either way, when we go back, we remember it.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe not immediately. Maybe some people are still in a state of confused amnesia for some time until
Wow.
they finally come out of it. Even on the other side, I've heard this through other NDE people speaking about how they saw other people on the other side that were just as confused in their life as they were, even on the other side, just as they were in that particular life. It can take some time to adjust to what's going on.
Yeah, I have this
Yeah.
theory about people because I believe that people pick their experiences here on Earth.
Mhm.
So people who have the life experience of Alzheimer's or
Mm,
dementia, I
mm.
feel like, and this is just like a random theory in my own
Yes.
head. I have
Yes.
no spiritual knowledge that says this is a true thing, but I think that maybe those souls sign up for that life experience because it's that much easier for them to shift into spiritual awareness when they leave, because they have already kind of forgotten how to be a human, or at least who they
Absolutely.
were. They've forgotten their personality, like their human
Absolutely.
personality. So
Yes.
maybe the shift is easier for them,
Yes.
because they're not
Yes.
attached to who they were, because they don't remember who they were.
Correct. And I've heard that too, that people that have
Yeah.
amnesia, sorry, amnesia, dementia, are already partly in the other realm and could be communicating with people on the other side. And people just think they're so confused, but they're 1 foot in the other realm. So that's a really interesting theory. Now, you're so big on manifestation. So,
Huge.
yeah, I know you're reading one of the a book that you've been talking about, saying miracle May. Um, so, what was the name of that great
Yeah, let
book?
me pull it up. I've got it
Yeah,
right
yeah.
here. It's called, a little plug for Gabby
May
Bernstein.
cause miracles. That's it.
May Cause Miracles, Gabrielle Bernstein's book, until I write my own, and then I'll be on here plugging my own. But
Yes,
this
yes,
book
thank you.
has caused major shifts in my life, and it is still, I'm doing it right now. I'm like on day 15, and it is causing, just in the 2 weeks that I've been doing it, just blessings all around me. I mean, it's
Wow.
incredible. But I also have a belief that that's what happens when I do the
Yes,
book. So like if
yes.
you start doing a book like this and you go, that's not going to work for me, then the universe hears you and
Won't
says,
work.
okay, that's not going to work for you. But
Yes.
I go into the book and I say, something major is going to shift in my life by doing this. And so the
Yes.
universe says, something major is
Yeah.
about to shift.
When you first returned from your near-death experience, and for the first 2 months, you said you didn't believe that what you'd really gone through was real to some degree. You'd convinced yourself that you were just having a really super high moment, and you tried to return to your old life.
Oh,
And
yeah,
you did for another 2 months until
absolutely.
there was no option for you to continue doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought it was drug induced psychosis. And all I knew was that I had to keep using drugs because I had a physical dependency to heroin. And so I
Yes.
couldn't stop. Even if I wanted to, I couldn't stop
Yes.
because I had a physical dependency to a
Of
drug.
course.
So I had to keep, and that was why I stayed strung out for as long as I did. And I had very intense mental addictions to other
Mm.
substances that I was using, even though they didn't have a physical withdrawal to them. But so then all of a sudden the drugs just stopped working. And then every time I would get them, it was like, yeah, I mean, I would just automatically black out. And, like I'm sure I was overdosing each time that I was using because I wasn't meant to, but I was waking up each time. And then all of my drug dealers decided to stop selling drugs on the exact same day. And it was bizarre. Like men that didn't know each other. They were all, I'd call up each of them. They'd all say, like, don't ever call me again. I'm out. I'm out of the game. I don't do this anymore. And it was just crazy. And then I found myself in heroin withdrawal because I had no way to get what I needed. And even when I was like going out on the street and trying to find it in different places in the city, it just wasn't working. So I'm in the middle of withdrawal. It's the most agonizing, painful experience of my life. And I hear this voice and it tells me that I could request what I wanted fixed. And I was in the throes of desperation. So I was like, okay, strange voice, please take away my withdrawal. And right then I heard a voice and it told me to lay back and to count down from 10. And as I did, these two little men appeared in my mind's eye. And they were these little white men with these bulbous noses wearing white lab coats. They were bald, and I still see them every time I tell this story. They're like, hey, what's up? We're still here. And they had these little lawnmowers and they started walking through my head and plowing out the crevices of my brain. And as they walked through, it was like these intense hot tingles were taking over the whole crown of my head. And then when they were done mapping out the entirety of my brain, I felt this plunger go down on the crown of my head. And then there was this bright white flash. And in that moment, I was instantaneously healed out of day 3 of heroin withdrawal, which is the absolute worst day. Heroin withdrawal usually lasts for around 7 days. So day 3, you're like really in it. Like you're just getting to that point where it's
And some
completely
people don't
unbearable.
survive day 3.
Oh, no. You always go back. Like day 3,
Yeah.
you're definitely going back to the
Yeah.
drugs for
Yes,
relief,
because it's
for
the
sure.
worst day.
It
Yes.
is the worst day. And I mean, I had just been like sick all over myself, hot and when you're in heroin withdrawal, it feels like your bones are actually made of fire and that your skin is made of broken glass. And like any touch is just absolute agony. And the most messed up part about it is that there's nothing physically wrong with you, but it feels like everything is physically wrong with you. It feels like you're cut up, like you're beat up, like somebody's punching you over and over and over again. There's nothing actually wrong. So in this moment, I'm completely healed. And I'm like, okay, this is absolutely bonkers. I'm definitely dead. And I just kept thinking that I was dead. And I was like, obviously I'm dead. I'm just healed all of a sudden, And there's just too many weird things. And I recognize now that the whole time after my experience, I just thought that everything that I was doing was to get back to heaven. So, I had this download. You have to do recovery. We're going to make drugs not work. We're going to heal you. This is your main barrier to getting clean, right? Is that you're sick. So we're going to take away your sickness. Now you can go get clean. Now you can go do recovery. And that's what I did very stubbornly. I definitely did not want to do this.
Right.
And I found myself in a long-term rehab. And I just kept thinking that I was just trying to get back to heaven. So I would cry out to God and I'd be like, okay, God, it's been 7 days and I haven't used drugs. That's amazing. I haven't done that since I was 15 years old. So can you come and get me now? And I'd receive no response. And then I'd make it to 2 months and I'd cry out again and still no response. I made it to a year. Okay, now it's 2 years and continually crying out to God, asking the universe to come and beam me back up to outer space. And
beam me up, Scotty, as that.
I slowly realized that it wasn't about going back to heaven, but it was actually about bringing heaven here, like how you just mentioned that too. And so every day I have an opportunity to bring heaven to earth, and that can be through something big, like like the women that I mentor, like working with them, or it could be something really tiny, like smiling at a stranger on the street or offering a homeless person something to eat. And every day I can choose to live a purpose-filled life, and that literally feels like heaven. It feels the same way that being up in that light spaceship felt, the exact same feeling, like so jazzed to be here.
I wanted to ask you a question about raising our vibration, which I think is such an important task, maybe for all of us on Earth. Well, maybe not for all of us, but I certainly is for some people. What are some of the basic tools that I heard you've spoken of before, which I think are so helpful to people? And they're so simple and can
Oh
keep
yeah.
us connected to source and keep our vibration higher. What do you
Yeah. So
suggest
I
someone
think
does?
one of the main lessons that I've learned in the integration of my experience is that I'm here to be a human, which was wildly disappointing to me in the beginning.
Me too.
I just wanted to go back to my light body. I didn't want to be in this human form. But there are ways that I raise my vibration so that I can feel more like my light self. And I don't think that it's one size fits all, but these are my tools that I use for me. And so if they resonate, take them. And if they don't, leave them behind. But so I eat clean. I'm a sugar-free, gluten-free vegan. There's no joy left in life, but I feel like it actually does make me feel a lot better to eat that way. And so and that's my discipline. My spiritual discipline is to watch what I consume. I exercise my body because it releases all of those really cool chemicals in my brain, like endorphins and dopamine and serotonin, all of the things that I was chasing with drugs and alcohol my whole life. Oh, there's a natural way to do it. I can just move my body consciously, and that happens too.
Brilliant.
I also only drink water, and I drink like a lot of water, like a little less than a gallon a day. Maybe I'm like trying to limit I feel like I'm going to drown myself soon. So I'm
Yeah.
trying to limit my water intake. And I also speak affirmation into my water. I make it part of a spiritual practice. Water holds memory. And so if you speak into the water in a loving way, it's like every cell in your body is then covered in that loving affirmation after you drink the water down. And our bodies are made of over 80% water. So think of that as well. The water in your body also holds memory. It doesn't know whether you're talking to yourself or talking to another person. So when you're judging somebody and saying it out loud, your body is taking that as an insult to yourself. Or if you're talking poorly to yourself, again, the water in your body is holding that memory as well. I'm not super great at that. At like the outer thing. Like I love judging people. I'm working on myself. And I love judging myself too. So
Yeah.
but I do make a conscious decision every morning. Like as soon as I wake up, I drink a liter of water as soon as I wake up, and I speak affirmation. I just want to get it out of the way. It's not because I love water or anything. I just want to get it over with, and I don't want to deal with it for many more hours in the day. So those are ways that I raise my vibration. I also do a lot of spiritual work. I am of service that raises my vibration. I belong to 12-step community to help with my addiction issues. And I love being of service. It makes me feel so purpose-filled. I do shadow work where I separate the different parts of myself and I give them character development. And that works for my light and my dark. So all those spiritual virtues that I mentioned before, like patience and tolerance, I need to design those versions of me because they don't come easy to me. Being patient and being tolerant is not, it's like not my regular. So I design her. I design the patient version of myself. She's beautiful. She's like almost translucent skin. And she wears like this beautiful pink veil over her head. And she's just like in this beautiful pink dress. And when I need to be patient, I call on her to come into my awareness and be my main personality for the moment. And you know, I develop my darkness the same way as well. So like I have an inner saboteur who, when things are going really well in my life, she loves to show up and fuck shit up. Pardon my language. And I have to be really conscious about her because she, you know, she looks like the chick from The Ring. She's like kind of like a really scary looking, like gray, like all her bones are like popped out of the socket and stuff. And so every morning I have to cover her in pink light so that she doesn't look scary, so that I can have a conversation with her and say, what is it that you need? And usually the parts of me that cause chaos in my life, they're just asking to come along for the ride. They just don't want to be forgotten, and they don't want to be killed or dismissed or anything like that. So I have to figure out tools to make them not be chaotic in my life and to bring them for the ride with me.
And I know you spoke of one of the characters that you have developed, Richard.
Yeah. So Richard is he's my drug addiction.
Yes.
He's a man. So, when I think of my addiction, I think of this man, and he's a gay man. He thinks that he's so fun, but he is a hot mess. And he lives inside, he wears like a white linen suit. He has a fedora. I don't know who he thinks he is, but he's very loud. He's very, very loud. He was my main personality profile for over 20 years. So the fact that we have almost 5.5 years of distance from each other is very challenging for him, because he's been my main guy my whole life. And so I keep him in this glass house inside my mind so that I can keep an eye on him. But the seams of the house are separated. So he'll like put his mouth up to the seams and he'll say things like, "Look at all those people in the bar. They're having such a great time. We should go in there with them." And I'm like, "No, Richard, we don't drink. Like we don't do that." And he just really wants me to pay attention to him. And, he's fractured off into all these other kinds of addiction, like eating disorders, pornography and masturbating addiction, binge watching TV, technology, scrolling, sugar addiction. I have so many different facets to my quote unquote negative coping strategies to not feel my feelings. Yes. My ego tells me that my feelings are too big for me. My experiences are too big for me. I need to medicate and sedate them. And that's not just the bad experiences. That's mainly the good experiences. Because the bad experiences, no, I've been doing that shit my whole life. Like that's easy. But the good experiences for me, like coming into this new part of my life, it's wildly uncomfortable for me. And so I've like really grabbed at a lot of different coping mechanisms that have not worked for me. And so for me, it's really important to stay vigilant in spiritual discipline and consistency. These are muscles that I'm growing. I'm growing spiritual muscles. And so I'm not going to walk into the gym and grab a 500-pound weight. I'm going to grab the little tiny things that I know work, like drinking water and eating clean. I know that those things work. And so that as long as I'm doing that every day, I'm in a good place.
Right. Thank you. What are the affirmations that you speak into your water? I think that would be really helpful. I will start. I've done it before.
Okay.
And I've done all the research on it. It completely works. It started with a scientist who proved it all, a Japanese scientist. I can't recall his name now because I'm a terrible sleep-deprived mother of three. But yes, he spoke incredible words of peace, love, joy, patience, yes, into beautiful water that he then froze, and they turned into the most incredible crystals. And then he did the same thing where he spoke hateful words and they turned into cancer-looking cells. And so it is so on point that this works. And if we then drink this water that we've spoken beautiful affirmations and intention into, really starts us off for the day. So what are these affirmations?
Yeah, thank you. I can't remember his name either, and I am not a sleep-deprived mother of three, so you're okay. Yeah, it's something like that. But it is
I'll
amazing
put it in when
research.
I edited. Sorry.
Yes, it is amazing research around. It's incredible. So every morning when I wake up, I surrender. I spiritually surrender over and over and over again, all throughout the day. But definitely as soon as I open my eyes, I go into a state of gratitude. I go into a little manifestation portal to design what it is that I'd like to experience in the day. Mm-hmm. And then when I go over to my water, I surrender my shortcomings to the divine. So some of the shortcomings that I deal with in my life today are judgment, mm-hmm. and defensiveness, mm-hmm. Sometimes a sense of entitlement, mm-hmm. and control. Those are my main 4 that really come up for me. So as I surrender those, I replace them with the spiritual virtues that can counteract them. Mm-hmm. So instead of control, I choose to be in a state of surrender. Instead of judgment, I choose to be in a place of tolerance. Instead of defensiveness, I choose to be in a state of, I guess, humility is kind of for the defensiveness and for the for all of them. But so, I need to be humble. So basically I speak into the water and I say, I am confident, I'm structured, I'm disciplined, I'm consistent, I'm kind, I'm humble, I surrender, I love you, I love you, I love you. And I just really imagine the cells in the water. I mean, I imagine all the molecules just really vibrating, and then I gulp it down.
Yeah.
And again, like that's how the day starts. And I might leave my house and forget my keys and be cursing God and the universe and everything that's ever existed. But I started my day that way. And so that's a win. And even if it only lasts for 5 minutes, that's still a win. If I can end cap my days in a state of spirit, I'm doing great. I don't need to spend the whole, like 14-hour day in a state of whatever. But yeah, so yeah, that's some of my, those are some of my affirmations.
And at the end of the day, we are human. It's very hard to just be a perfect spiritual being all day. So
we wanted to do that. We would have stayed in heaven.
That's right. We've got beeping cars and bills that come in and phones that go off nonstop. And just as you get onto a phone call that you really want to speak to your friend, somebody else starts calling. All these things that interrupt us, and Wi-Fi and all this stuff that goes on all day. It's very hard to be in this perfect state unless we're meditating all day in a cave. Betty,
that's why I think that like for like Buddhist monks who like go away and they live in the mountains, like, yeah, of course you're enlightened, bro. Like you don't know anything that's going on in the world, of course.
Yeah.
But like when you're actually experiencing the dual experience and you're dealing with the mirrors to yourself. We're all mirrors to each other. Yes. So, and like that goes for people that really inspire you and people that really annoy you. Everybody is a mirror to you. We're made of water. It's water reflecting water. So, like it could be really easy to sit on a pillow all day and be like, I'm an enlightened being, but that's not what we came here to do. We came here to be human, and that means to interact with each other, to find the God in the other person and the God in yourself, and to be frustrated and to have this huge range of emotions going up and down the scale of consciousness. And the sooner that you can learn to embrace that, man, the sooner I learned to embrace that, my life got way, way better.
Yes. And I think 3D is so judgmental. People, there's something about the vibration on Earth in 3D where judgment is a huge challenge for us. We don't like it, but somehow we get sucked into it. And yet that's what I think lowers our vibration. That's one of the big things that lowers our vibration, is that we judge one another without seeing any of the full picture. And surrendering. Christ talks about surrendering a lot. When you read the Christ energy, surrender and being humble is I think a really huge theme in.
Yeah, I think that sometimes my affirmation is I pray to God to let me see myself and others the way that God sees them. Mm-hmm. So just in divine perfection, it's way harder for me to do it with myself than other people. Well, no, actually, sometimes I don't like other people too, but like strangers, I'm cool with. But like if I know you, I might be judging.
Yeah. Same. That's been a big lesson for me, that I think I've been talking to myself about that since I was 19, when I first realized that that's a challenge that I need to overcome. I'm being 47 now, and I'm still trying so hard to overcome it. I could see myself still in another 40 years' time, if I get there, having the same conversation with myself.
Oh, yeah. I talked to my grandmother like a couple of months ago, and she said something about like, I'm still trying to lose that 8 pounds. And I was like, oh my God, if I'm 90 years old and still talking about trying to lose 8 more pounds, like what did I do with my human life,
Yeah, that's right. I've got millions of questions, Betty, but I'm sure that you need to go. Thank you so much for making yourself available. How can people contact you? I completely
thank you so much for this space. It's so cool to connect with other spiritual women, and it's just beautiful to create conscious space for people to talk about these kinds of experiences, to make them regular, So many of us are having these kinds of experiences. You don't have to die to have a spiritual awakening. People are having spiritual awakenings all the time. I have spiritual awakenings every day. And the more that we talk about this stuff, the more that it becomes regular. And I think that that's what this shift is all about, is making the extraordinary ordinary. So thank you for this. And if anybody wants to connect, I'm on social media. My handle on everything is Buddha Betty. It's a play on words. I'm not a Buddha.
Yes, love it.
But I would be really excited to connect with anybody that feels called to.
Great. I'll put that in the credits at the end of the interview. Thank you so much, Betty. Have an incredible day. No, actually, it's evening for you. Have an incredible evening. That's right. I'm the one in the morning. I'm so confused. Yeah. Take care. Enjoy.
So much, Lisa. Appreciate you.
Thank
Bye.
you. Bye.